Welcome back to Behind the Print podcast, where we feature industry leaders and uncover the creative minds and their businesses within the world of professional printing. Our mission is to provide you with inspiring, actionable resources that elevate your business projects and accelerate your journey to excellence in profit and print. Today's episode is How a Childhood in Nature Shaped a Master of Wildlife Art. And we're talking about how one artist's deep love for the outdoors grew into a lifelong passion for capturing the wild in breathtaking detail. Joining me today is wildlife artist Dallen Lambson.
To
How's it
be
going
here
today?
and I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing so good, and I'm so glad to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me and thanks for being patient with me. This took a little bit of doing.
We're just thrilled to have you on, and schedules are hectic, especially around the holidays, so I completely understand.
Well, thank you for bearing with me and thank you for understanding.
So I'm curious, Dallen, who do you paint for? Like when you're creating, who do you imagine on the other end of the painting?
That's a really good question. And kind of like you might expect, the answer to that is somewhat circumstantial. There are some pieces that are privately commissioned. And so in that situation, I have a really good sense of who
Yeah,
I'm painting for. And they tend to be pretty specific about what they want to look like when all is said and done. Sometimes I do work for commercial enterprises, publishers,
wow.
people that are going to distribute that art very broadly. And in a
Whoa.
situation like that, I try to think more broadly about who that end customer is going to be, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Right, right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that must have been a harder or more difficult process to narrow down throughout the years. Was that like something that came to you naturally, or were you like, oh, let's try a little bit something different throughout the lines?
Again, probably a mixed bag as far as a good answer to that. Over the years, I have gotten a little bit, I think, a little bit more dialed into who that general audience is out there. For the most part, I would say that the people who buy those prints that are distributed by the publisher tend to be wildlife enthusiasts, outdoor enthusiasts, men and women who enjoy going afield, camping, hunting, fishing, exploring, whatnot.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm also curious, how do you bring that to life? Like, what's your mindset that you try and get into before starting a painting, or is there any rituals that you have?
I think for me, I like the word ritual that you used there. I think that's a good way of putting it, actually. I suspect that every artist probably has their own little ritual for addressing that. I find that for me, I go hunting for inspiration, whether that's a field, which would certainly be my preference, but as often as not, that is going online, looking at dozens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of images until something kind of starts formulating. And in that process, I'll find something here that is compelling to me. And then I'll find something over here that I think, oh, I could maybe include some of that. And sometimes that starts to forming something in my mind's eye that I feel like I can use.
Mhm.
Sometimes it shuts me down completely and forces me in a very different direction. I never quite know where that route is going to take me,
Right.
and that may be taking the very maybe taking the very long route, the very long scenic route to get to the final destination. But thus far, that kind of seems to be my approach.
Mhm.
And again, it depends. When I'm trying to deal with something very broadly, that's a broad approach. If I'm trying to deal with something very specific, if somebody says, hey, here is what I want you to paint, then suddenly that process gets very streamlined, kind of like you'd expect.
Yeah, yeah, I bet that's a little easier sometimes when they know exactly what they want. But when you're searching, oh my goodness, it's so unique. You get something completely original. And you guys, I just have to show you his calendar. This is amazing. And when I first saw this picture, I thought it was like a photograph. I really did. I really thought it was a photograph when they were like telling me about the podcast coming up, and I was like, no way. And so I looked through more of the images, and you guys, they are just stunning. You guys definitely check out his website, check out his artwork because these works of art aren't something that doesn't come from a ritual. Okay. He's got his process down. And it also makes me wonder, like, are there other artists who do what you do in this field? What do you think makes you stand out?
Yeah, there are other artists that I hesitate to say do what I do because
Right.
every artist is unique as far as
Yeah.
their approach, as far as their style, as far as what kind of tickles their fancy in general.
Right.
And so I am sure there are other artists out there doing very similar to what I'm doing. It's interesting as I have dealt with a couple of different publishers now who tend to deal more with the masses. It's interesting to talk to the people who are kind of at the head of those organizations
Mm,
and get a feel from them for what their people are looking for.
right.
And I find it interesting. For example, if I am painting for a gallery, I probably am going to utilize maybe a little different subject matter, maybe a little different style in the work that I do, knowing that
Totally.
it's going to be hanging on a gallery wall
Right.
versus trying to produce something for a publisher that they're
Mhm.
going to then market to the places that they distribute to throughout the country.
Right.
And those techniques and those styles do kind of fluctuate depending on the end customer. It's interesting what the galleries seem to kind of like versus what the publishers seem to kind of want to like.
Yeah.
The publisher likes the realism, the detail. They like to see exciting colors and play with light and contrast, something that's really going to pop and get
Uh-huh.
the attention of somebody who's walking into a store, probably not looking for artwork,
Right.
but hopefully they come across something that they just can't not have and take it off the wall and bring it home. That's what we hope. And with the
No
gallery,
kidding.
it seems to be just a little bit different. And so yeah, in kind of a rambling sort of way. I hope that gets to what you were asking about.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And it leads me to another question that I'm kind of curious about. What advice would you give to young artists in your field who are looking to make those partnerships with the museums or with the publishers? Do you have any advice for them?
I guess the advice that I would give would be to, first of all, make sure that you're producing the caliber of art that's going to get the attention of other people. Make
Mhm.
sure it is good quality caliber art.
Right.
And sometimes that means finding a mentor, sometimes that means finding a good teacher. I feel like I was very blessed to have that in my pursuit of the arts.
Right.
Somebody that can help you get better, or somebody that can point out what your weaknesses are and how to improve on them. I think,
Hmm.
as a general rule, a lot of us have a desire to create, to be creative
Hmm.
in various and sundry arts. But a lot of times, the exposure that we give that art is to family and friends, the kind
Yeah.
of people who love you and
Yeah.
aren't always real honest with you about what you're showing them and how good it is or what the quality is, or maybe they're just a little bit ignorant themselves and say, yeah, that looks really good.
Right.
Whereas if you took that same piece of art to a gallery owner, they might have a very different attitude about that.
Yeah, no, that makes a
And
lot of
so,
sense.
yeah, for starters, just make sure that you're getting very good at your craft. And
Cool.
eventually you get good enough at something, and other people will take notice, people that have a vested interest in that sort of thing, and say, hey, I feel like you and your work might have a place here. Can we have that conversation?
Wow. That's incredible. Wow, that's just so, so cool, Helen. Oh my goodness. So, what are some maybe major milestones that have come out of that for you?
Let's see. So let me just back up a little bit, if I
Yeah.
may. So when I was just a little tyke growing
Uh-huh.
up, my dad, Hayden Lambson, is
Hmm.
a very established, incredibly good wildlife artist. And so, in a lot of ways, I'm just kind of the victim of my upbringing. I'll put it that way. But what he had done was he had converted our garage into a very beautiful studio.
Wow.
And what I really liked doing as a kid is I would walk into that garage, sit down on the steps leading into that studio, and those steps were just right across from where he was painting. I would sit on those steps and just watch that creative process. I was
Yeah.
so intrigued by that, so fascinated by it, just watching this blank canvas slowly come to life at the hands of someone who really knew what they were doing. And so
Hmm.
I was really blessed to come up in and out of that kind of environment.
Right.
And so, all of that to say that I would say one of the landmark moments for me was just that initial love affair with seeing the
Yeah.
creative process in real time. And somewhere along the way, let's see, as much as I loved art and producing art, I'm not sure that I ever felt like I was the kind of guy that could make a living at it. My dad was, but I worshiped him. He was a hero of mine, and I really put him on a pedestal and didn't feel like I could ever achieve such such heights myself. And so I pursued other things for a while. I went to college, and in college, I was more of a business guy. I studied business,
Uh-huh.
took some art classes, but that was something I did on the side. It was not the priority academically.
Got you.
Looked into, I was doing construction for a little while. I was doing teaching for a little while, student teaching.
Ooh.
Gosh, sold life insurance for a
Oh,
little
wow.
while.
That's tough.
Just did sales for a little while, just dabbled in things kind of like everyone else does, trying to find
Hmm.
their place in the world. And I didn't feel like I was finding my place in any of that. None of it felt right. None of it felt good. In every case, I felt like I was out of my element. And the one place I felt like I was in my element was producing art. And so,
Oh,
somewhere along the way, it occurred to me I should probably get more serious about this art thing than I have been.
right.
And so I produced some art. I went to a nearby printing shop. They helped me to print some pieces of my art off, and I started peddling it as best I could to the people I thought might be interested in buying it,
Hmm.
and got a little bit of traction there. And what's nice about those little victories along the way is that as you start pursuing, let's say, bigger fish, you can kind of use where you've come from and some of those other successes along the way to help add validity to what you have and
Right.
what you've done. You
Totally.
start laying that groundwork as amateurish as it might be, but you get that following, that build up, and you can take that to other people and say, hey, here's what I've done and done
Hey,
pretty well with it. And I feel like maybe I might be a good fit for what you have here. And that's been, I would say, the pattern for me as far as that goes, whether that's dealing with publishers or galleries or other organizations that deal in the arts.
wow, that is such a beautiful story. I just imagine you as a little kid taking in those creations like a time lapse camera, just filling up your brain with all those new creations that your dad worked on, and each one seeing it from start to finish. Like, oh my goodness, that's just such humble beginnings, and what a great story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I suppose every artist has a very interesting and even fascinating story about how they landed where they are. In a nutshell, that one is mine.
I guarantee it. There's some crazy stories out there. So, on the flip side, what are maybe some challenges you're dealing with within your business right now?
Let's see. That's a really good question. I see any number of potential challenges, some real, some perceived, some maybe forthcoming. But like anything, certainly there are challenges. AI, for example,
Yeah.
AI, kind of like anything else, has the potential to be a real asset and a real blessing, depending on how it's used, what we do
Yeah.
with it.
Right.
But for us creative types, as AI gets better at, gosh, the creativity thing, That certainly has the potential to be a problem
Yeah.
for us. I'm already seeing that a little bit as I talk to some
Mm.
of my other artist friends.
Wow.
So yeah, that's one thing that comes to my mind. And
Yeah,
here's kind of a random other thing that I have found to be the case with myself, and as I talk to other artists,
totally.
it seems as if, and this is painting with a pretty big brush, says the
Mhm.
artist, right? But as a general rule, I would say us artsy folks kind of have that side of the brain, that creativity side of the brain does a pretty good job of banging on all cylinders. But sometimes that other side, that side that might deal with organization,
Yeah.
accounting, dealing with the numbers, marketing, dealing with people, things like that. Sometimes that side of the brain isn't
Hmm.
always doing what we want it to do. It's like that creative side takes over. That
Yeah,
other side that might otherwise help us be successful artists
right.
by way of running that business
Hmm.
for artists that are trying to do both, I have found that sometimes that can be a challenge. Just our own predisposition as artists.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough when you have a passion that you're so involved in and excited about when there's other nitpicky things that you have to do to push that to the next level. I could totally see where that focus gets diverted. I would just be so into the art rather than the business side of things. I completely agree.
Yeah, for sure, because it really is at the end of the day a managerial position
Right.
for people who want to be artists and run their own art
Hmm.
business. And that
Yeah.
is a lot to manage. At the end of the day, if you're not careful, you'll spend so much time trying to
Mhm.
manage a business that you start losing the time you need to actually produce the product, the art,
Yeah.
those minor details. And I think that's always going to be a struggle for a lot of
Hmm.
people who are in that boat.
Yeah. Well, I have I've just a couple more questions for you, but I'm really curious about this next one, and you might not know the answer, so if you don't, that's okay. But how do you use print, and do you know your return on investment for printing?
So I consider this to be a fortunate thing. At least it works out well for me.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the printing anymore that I deal with is done by other organizations, other people that have a vested interest themselves in my art,
Yeah.
and so they deal with a lot of that end of things.
Got you.
And
Yeah.
so it becomes pretty apparent right away what they want to charge me if I want to turn around and sell some of that product of mine that they are producing.
Got
The
you.
numbers are pretty transparent, and I can say, okay, here's what I need to charge in order
Hmm.
to make this a profitable venture for both of us. If that
Hmm.
makes sense. And does that kind of answer your question, or did
Yeah,
I go off
totally.
into left field there on you?
No, no, that totally makes sense. You got to gauge your market and know your worth and then just counter them on that and see what type of deals you can work out.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned specifically, prints.
Right,
I think something that a lot of us artists struggle with is pricing our original art,
right.
the original pieces that we produce, that we spend
Yeah,
hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks.
yeah.
I know some artists that talk about spending a month or multiple
Mm-hmm.
months
Mm-hmm.
on a single piece. And in a situation like that, where so much of your time is wrapped up in creating this thing, gosh, what do you charge for it to at least in the world of dollars and cents justify that time and effort? And
Right.
so that I think is kind of an ongoing challenge. And again, a great question by you. I know some
Thank
artists
you.
that really break that down almost like on an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna factor these things into the equation and get an idea from that, and it's going to spit out an answer, and that's the number I'm going to give my potential customer. And
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more loosey goosey than that. I'm getting a pretty good idea over the years of what it's going to take me time wise to produce certain things. It's interesting how the same, let's say, for example, 16 by 20 painting,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what I'm being asked to paint,
Mm-hmm.
that same painting could either take me 2 days or it could take me 4 days. Like you'd
Yeah,
expect, some pieces are more technical than other
right.
pieces. Some
Mm-hmm.
pieces are a little bit more simple than other
Yeah.
pieces. And so when I'm trying to factor in what I'm going to charge people, I'll let them know, hey, as you might expect, what I charge depends on the size and the scope of the project. In other
Totally.
words, the size, we can rack up, okay, how many square inches is it? And what am I going to charge per square inch? And then factor in, gosh, this piece is a little bit more technical. You didn't want just a deer in the scene. You wanted a big buck fighting another big buck with a big golden eagle flying overhead and a big lake in the background. And you know what I mean? On
That's
and on and
awesome.
on. And so I just try to bear all that in mind as I'm thinking through each new project. And if those are
Yeah.
pieces that somebody's commissioning, I try to make sure that I've got a good idea in my mind. Okay, what is this going to take me? What's my time worth? And sometimes the number I come up with scares people off, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people love it and we're able to work together, but that's been my attitude. Not super formulaic, but a little
Right.
bit formulaic, just combined
Yeah.
with a sense of my time and what I feel like my time is worth.
Yeah, that's totally so important to value your time and just all the heart that you put into it. And I'm wondering, do you ever get attached to your original artworks and you're like, oh, I can't get rid of this?
I would say mostly no.
Good, good. That's a good thing.
and maybe uh, I've got a lot of artist friends that feel very differently, that do fall in love with their art, and that's great. I do have a certain relationship with each piece of art that I produce. It's like anything else. In some sense, it does become your baby, your
Hmm.
creation, this thing that you've invested time and effort, some sweat equity into. And a lot of times it's subject matter that I'm pretty passionate about and that I really love and enjoy. And so
Yeah.
there is a part of me that forms these connections with the art that I produce. But at the end of the day, for me, it's very much also a business, a way that I provide for my family. My wife and I, we've got 6 kids. So that's a lot of mouths to
Awesome.
feed. And that's a good incentive for just trying to send art out the door, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel like I totally have the luxury of falling in love with a piece and being totally brokenhearted about it when somebody buys it.
Right.
I would say, and it's funny, even after I've been doing this for all of these years, it's always very flattering. It's always very meaningful to me when somebody not only pays you a compliment as an artist for the work that you do, but when those people are willing to part with some of their hard earned dollars to take a piece that you have created and hang it on their wall. Like I said, even after all these years, to me that's still very humbling. I still feel very honored by that. But
'Cause that's huge.
but
That's a huge accomplishment. That's amazing. Like each one
uh,
is a testament to just everything you've done so far.
yeah, well said, Zoe. Yeah, that's really true. Thank you.
So, if you weren't painting, weren't in the studio, and had a free day to spend however you'd like, what would you be doing?
Generally, that generally that either involves doing something with my better looking half or doing something with one of my kids.
Well, that's
Um,
awesome.
a day off. Admittedly, I don't get a lot of those.
I
I
bet.
tend to spend I tend to spend a lot of my time hunkered down in my studio, which is down in my basement. When we moved to the home that we live in now, I found
Hmm.
a master bedroom downstairs and I staked my claim to it. And so that's where I do my work. That's where the magic happens. And so I spend a lot of my time down in the basement, and I sometimes compare myself to that mad scientist that kind of locks himself away and doesn't get a lot of exposure to the outside world. And somewhere along the way, he loses his social skills. And I feel like I've become one of those people when I go out into public and try to carry on a meaningful conversation with somebody and realize that I can't. But when I do have a day off, I love the outdoors. That is such a big part of who I am, such a big
Yeah.
part of the work that I do. The art that I produce is very much
Hmm.
inspired by, obviously, the great outdoors. Whether that's hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, I just thoroughly enjoy it all. I just love being out in nature. And if I can do that with the people I love, even better.
Even better. I completely agree with you. Better, perfectly said. Perfectly said. And before we wrap up, where can people follow you, purchase your work, or check out your latest piece?
Thank you. So, probably the easiest way to find me is, gosh, my personal Dallen Lambson Facebook page. I've got a
Okay.
Dallen Lambson wildlife art Facebook page, a little bit more dedicated to the business end of things. And I've got an Instagram page. I'm trying to think of what it's called. Something like Lambson Dallen. I think it's just last name first, first name
Okay.
last, basically. Anyway,
Well,
I'm pretty easy to find. I think you could even Google Dallen Lambson and find me. Hopefully there's nothing too scary.
you guys definitely can search him up, Dallen Lambson Wildlife Art, and you will find many great things from the website to the Facebook to the Instagram, which I'll link down below. So be sure to check those out. But that's another episode of Behind the Print podcast. Thanks to our listeners for joining us as we've explored the artistry and innovation of the printing world. Remember, having a strong vision like Dallen and using tools like print to amplify your message will make your brand stand out from the crowd. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to stop by Printing Center USA and get yourself a free sample pack to share with your fellow business enthusiasts. Until next time, keep those creative sparks flying and remember, there's always more to discover behind the print.